Hello everyone, this is Zoltar, and welcome to another Offworld Trading Company multiplayer game. This one's going to be just a quick little post-game discussion with the game on top of it. And the reason I'm doing this video in particular is because this is going to be from the upcoming patch of Offworld Trading Company, which specifically has some pretty reasonable changes to robotic going into it. So I thought it was worth taking a look at for sure. As you can see, this was up against Soren, his wife, and Jay Bowers, and Soren and I both just went ahead and planted robotic this game. This is something I usually don't do, and so you can kind of assume from that how the game's going to go for me. And we will see also right at the start that Soren Johnson went ahead and cut me off from one of the aluminum tiles I was after. I needed to claim that a bit faster. And that kind of causes me problems for, let's be honest, the entire duration of the game. Now, we'll cover real quick the changes that are going into robotic, and then I'll kind of try and talk through what I remember of the other changes I've noticed from this patch as we're going through the game. So, robotic. First of all, you'll notice that even though I'm at HQ level 1, I'm consuming 0.2 electronics per second instead of 0.1. So the rate at which you consume life support as robotic has been doubled. I'm now up to 0.4 because I'm HQ level 2. The other big change to robotic that's going in this patch is you'll notice I'm putting my steel mills down specifically next to my iron. Very specifically next to my iron and arranged in that particular way because the metal mine will now provide an adjacency bonus for steel mills if you are the robotic colony. And that's not all. My understanding is that any gathering resource building will provide an adjacency bonus for a directly related building, production building. So just to give some examples in case I didn't quite say that in a way everybody understands, my understanding is that the metal mine will produce a bonus for steel mills. Things like the water pump would produce a bonus for food that is next to it. This bonus only, from my understanding, goes into the production building, not into the resource gathering building. But it could be very, very useful. So like water for the electrolysis reactor and the hydroponic farm. Things like, I believe, even something like a quarry would provide a bonus for chemicals if a chemical production was planted next to it. Possibly even things like silicon would provide a quarry, again, would provide production bonus for glass. We'll see real quick, I zoomed in on the new solar panel. I just want to point that out real fast before people missed it. That there was a new solar panel building in the game now, an updated look to it. There's also a new geotherm, which I'll try and point out at some point over the course of this game. So those were really the big changes to robotic here. Kind of a little bit of a nerf in that you consume more electronics, but a buff in that you can get additional adjacency bonuses very easily. You'll see that my 3 steel mills, instead of producing 3 steel, like you would normally expect them to at this point in the game, are producing 3.5. So that's definitely very nice. Let's see if I can remember anything else. I think there were some other mild changes in the patch that were worth noting. For example, I think steel mills now consume a bit more power. I think, just if I remember correctly, I think they now consume 0.3 power, which is significantly more than they used to, for sure. Rather than the old 0.2, I want to say is what it was. So some small things like that going into the game with the next patch as well. I'm sure I'm forgetting plenty of other things that are being changed and adjusted. Obviously, the patch is going to be hitting very, very soon, and so hopefully everybody will get their hands on it. But the really big one I wanted to focus on is that maybe robotic will be worth playing now. Frankly, up until this point, I haven't seen the point. You know, I could just play expansive, and then I'm playing robotic, but easier. It's a very, very similar feel to the two of them. And I really like the idea that, in particular with robotic this time, Mohawk is making an effort to kind of make tile placement for robotic more interesting and more unique. Kind of similar to the way that tile placement for scientific is very unique right now, for example, right? Very, very unique feel placing your tiles as scientific. Kind of a unique feel placing your tiles as expansive versus scavenger, because expansive just has so many that you kind of need to arrange them slightly differently in order to be using them well. But then you kind of had like maybe scavenger and robotic felt really similar, or even robotic and expansive felt really similar, because you know, with scavenger, for example, you're gathering carbon at least, so there's that small difference there, right? And you don't have to worry about steel or iron. So there's that difference in tile placement. With robotic and expansive, it felt almost exactly the same. Expansive just had more. So I don't know. It's a nice little change to see going in the game. I like the direction that kind of takes the game. One thing you'll notice, I think, later on is you'll see Soren kind of be putting glass furnaces down next to his quarry that he's got silicon rolling out of. And from my understanding, I just want to clarify this. Soren wasn't 100% sure either, so I'm not going to feel bad if I get it wrong. But I think that even if the quarry was gathering something like carbon and you put a glass furnace next to it, which doesn't use carbon, the glass furnace would still get that adjacency bonus, which I thought was very interesting. You'll see Soren has now completely blocked off the ability for me to connect my steel mills and my metal mines to my headquarters. So yeah, that was a pretty serious mistake I made this game, not ensuring that kind of thing could happen, that I would be able to connect up later. But this is a fairly interesting game for me because I was playing robotic. We did have those new ideas slipped in there. I think there might be another balance or adjustment or two that I've forgotten about, but let's get to the other huge change for the game that I think is an extremely positive move, which is double hacker array as it is currently primarily used is going away, because you will not be able to initiate the same espionage action at the same time. Like, so let's say you have two hacker arrays down. You will not be able to do two power shorts simultaneously. You would not be able to do two power surpluses simultaneously, and so on and so forth through all of the resources in the game. So while you still can use two hacker arrays, if you wanted to say short power and silicon at the same time, you could do that. But you cannot get those massive double shorts rolling in and just kind of overtake an entire game with that play, which I think is fantastic. In my opinion, double hacker array kind of destroys the gameplay of the game and is boring and awful. So I'm really glad to see that change happening, personally. Certainly a positive step forward for the game, in my opinion. Those were the big things. There's another change involving nanotech, which a lot of people should be happy about, which was that nanotech is going to be significantly more expensive in the next patch from what we've seen so far, which is very, very nice. More expensive. I believe it takes longer to upgrade as well. Just kind of pushing that back because everybody knows nanotech, everybody can agree nanotech is at least one of the best patents in the game. Some people would argue the best patent in the game. And certainly that argument can be made. So it's very, very nice to see nanotech being brought more in line with what its power actually is, in my opinion. I think that about covers the major changes I wanted to get to. I think I remembered everything that was really relevant. I don't know if we've seen that new geotherm yet. We'll see it at some point. You guys have gotten a good look at the new solar panels, though. Yeah. That should about cover what I really wanted to talk about. So we can get down to actually talking about the game at this point, just to finish up the rest of the video. You'll see that I've been trying to take a bit of water. I'm hoping that taking up that water early, we can see water's very valuable still, will kind of force other people into ice condensers, and that they'll have to use their tiles a bit less efficiently is the goal there. I've also secured a fair amount of aluminum, and I'm hoping to make a decent profit off of that. Unfortunately, I don't think I do a great job of actually profiting on my water. But it was a great idea, and you can see it's kind of working out. $80 water, and I control some of the best water in the game. It was an interesting little call. Maybe I go for a hacker array and hack the water. This game was a few days ago. It took me a long time to get around to doing this because, frankly, YouTube's been causing me a lot of problems lately. And I've been having to deal with that. So I don't strictly remember everything about this game, but that should make it more exciting for all of us, shouldn't it? As you can see, I'm just going for more and more water. I think I overcommit to water just a bit, just so people are aware. That's something that's worth noting. But yeah, you'll see here, nanotech, far more expensive, takes 80 now instead of, maybe it was even as low as 20, 40, 20 or 40 before. Very, very small number of chemicals required previously. I don't know if it's enough. I don't know. I feel like maybe nanotech deserves to be on that level of thinking machines and teleportation. But it's a step in the right direction. I don't know of any changes with water engine and even more importantly, cold fusion yet, which are the water-based patents. I would love to see some changes to cold fusion in particular, but for now I think we have a step in the right direction nonetheless. We see that Soren has gone into a fair amount of electronics and glass, clearly very profitable items at this point. I'm also trying to do the same for electronics, skipping out on glass this time, because I focused kind of a little bit more on water instead. He also still has a lot of steel production down, which I think works out since he was playing robotic. And we'll also see power has completely evaporated in price, right? Power's $2, so he's transferring out of that, out of his solar panels, and he'll move into something else in just a moment. We can see his glass production is very strong. My water production is very strong. And then there's some good glass production coming out of you as well. I don't remember where that underground nuke was. Ah, yes, my carbon. I wasn't completely expecting my carbon to get nuked, in particular because I thought if anybody was going to be attacking me, it would be Soren. And he might rely a little bit on carbon prices staying down. But if he had his own source of carbon, it still makes sense. Just trying to get those electronics down. Oh, another thing that was going on in this game I should point out that hopefully won't be in with the patch. I did talk to Soren about it after the game. You'll notice when I'm dealing with these electronics factories, I'm trying to find the auto supply button, and that's not going well for me. It's not there. The UI is shifted up, which is nice. It's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit more readable because there are pictures instead of words there. And so once you know what the picture means, it'll be a little bit faster to use, in my opinion, and a little bit nicer. But at the time, it was quite frustrating that auto supply wasn't one of the buttons. But from what I was told, that was a UI error and not an actual change to the game. Basically, if there had been a button to make auto supply work, auto supply would have worked. So the game itself wasn't changed, it's just I didn't have access to a button to tell auto supply to turn on. You'll notice at this point my debt's gotten completely out of control, by the way. I think I just let it go too far with power in the early game, and right at this point, I'm struggling to get into electronics to kind of cut that flow, which I think is just an adjustment I need to make to playing robotic, because I'm leaking hundreds of dollars a second just in electronics right now. It's quite painful. I try and recover, but it goes okay. Look, it goes okay. We can see that I've kind of stayed alive for the moment, at least. But I have completely tanked the price on certain things that I'm using, and I don't appropriately move out of them, like aluminum, which I could have very easily transitioned all this water production that I have into something serious, taken away my steel, taken away my aluminum production, got some electrolysis up, things of that nature. Certainly plan to move into chemicals after that even, but it just doesn't happen. And I've had one claim sitting around for like a year just trying to get another electronics factory down, and I'm doing a terrible job of like buying up the silicon I need in order to actually make electronics, right? So it's a bad game all around for me at this point. You'll also notice Soren just threw down an Offworld, so he's actually in a pretty good spot. Not sure what Jay Bowers was up to this game. He was never particularly relevant to me. I was mostly spending all my time fighting with Soren over land. So that was interesting in and of itself.
8,000, 9,000.
And so Jay Bowers and you both were kind of just out of my sphere of influence, and I didn't do a whole lot with them at that point in the game. Well, you'll see another UI button there. We've got the ship resources button has changed to kind of look like a truck, so that's a nice little thing to see. It's good to see all of these enhancements going into the game fairly quickly, because let's be honest, the UI is definitely a place where this game suffers. This was just a very slow game for me. It's very interesting to watch. Soren just playing it super safe, buying up all the stock that he can, including his own, because he knows he's got a lead at this point, right? He appropriately moved into electrolysis. I'm trying to force this weird chemical transition because of that. When it might have been better for me to just go straight into electrolysis much, much, much faster and not try and force electronics to bend to my will. We will note I'm still not buying silicon that I need to keep electronics online. It's a very difficult transition to make. Being used to, oh, well, I just won't have production for that. I'll just auto-supply it because it'll be fine. And then not having access to the auto-supply button. But like I said, that should be back later. Soren's Offworld is finally online. I still don't have electrolysis down over there like I intended to. It's just, it's a mess for me, this game, guys. Let's be honest. It was a bit of a mess. There we go. Finally get the metal mines scrapped. Trying to get steel production down. I've got like 2 unused claims, or at least 2 unused tiles right now. It's just, it's an odd game altogether. We do see that geotherm, by the way. I think we've spotted it a couple of times by now. But there was a geotherm plant right down there on the screen. And that's what they look like now, rather than the kind of... It's a more full building. It's more of a building, right? Which I thought was interesting. I am leaking electronics so hard. Can't keep that production online to save my life. It's really bad. Oh, that's hilarious. Game should be over before too long. I don't remember exactly how long it takes. But I'll be straight with you guys. Look, Soren wins this game. Soren wins this game pretty freaking hard. As should be obvious to anybody who's familiar with it at this point, right? I have 100,000 debt. I can't get rid of it at all. Electronics are just leaking through my fingers constantly. And I have to move into them because they're so expensive. I'm trying to force my way through with the hacker array. Not really doing a good job of using the patent lab. The whole game just kind of fell apart. I don't know how much more there is to say from here about the game itself. We can see that you went for a Pleasure Dome, but Pleasure Dome was never very good this game, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise with 2 robotic players in particular, because there was never really any encouragement to move too much into life support other than to make money, right? Like, money wasn't leaking through our fingers just because we weren't making life support for the colony in particular. So the colony never seems to have grown much. And in turn, the Pleasure Dome never ended up being very good. Once again, I'm trying to just move into the appropriate resources. I scrapped my power, trying to get more steel down, not even realizing until then that I needed to purchase iron still because I couldn't auto-supply. Guys, that really frustrated me, like, the whole time. I have no idea what that error message is about, by the way. It seemed to happen when I scrapped a building, but that was a very weird moment for me. I was like, oh, we're actually still in this maybe a little bit, because I'd basically given up inside by this point in the game. I knew how much trouble I was in. Look at all that debt. Accruing 400 a second still, just purely in electronics, because I never buy silicon. You just watch this whole game, and you can just yell at me constantly, like, buy silicon, buy silicon, buy silicon. It doesn't happen. Oh, guys. Moral of the story is, your buildings should always be either auto-supplying or turned off. Those are the 2 states your buildings should exist in. And hopefully, by the time the patch hits, that UI issue will be resolved, and auto-supply will be solidly back into the game. Yeah, it wasn't the worst game ever, but don't let your debt get out of control like this. Soren's up to 2 off-worlds at this point. I'm trying to make him, you know, stay honest, stay on top of his off-worlds, make him repair those faster. But that's a very, very difficult thing for me to do on my own.
We're not surprised.
See there, I went after the new one thinking, the new one won't be defended. I was wrong. Couldn't have been more wrong. Finally getting some of the debt paid off. Finally starting to get electronics production actually working a little bit. Finally making money off the chemicals, but it's all too late. Let's be honest. It's all too late. I'm nowhere near an off-world. I just can't make the game happen anymore. Yu does get a buyout on Jay Bowers, which is good for her because it gets a fair amount of her stock back in her own possession, certainly. And we will see that Soren doesn't even have... Soren has thinking machines, though. Like, Soren has thinking machines and teleportation and perpetual motion. So he's just put himself in a great position as a robotic player to finish out the game. No nanotech taken, which I thought was interesting. I probably could have gone into it, but chemicals just got a little out of control. With Soren and I both working the patent lab pretty hard, and then even an engineering lab down. Oh, there's the nanotech patent. There you go. See, still a good patent, despite the fact that it's significantly more expensive now. Definitely a good thing, I think, that nanotech nerf.
Surprised, just disappointed.
Still nothing, guys. Still nothing. Trying to dynamite those down. It's one of the reasons I love dynamiting people from behind is because, okay, yeah, the dynamite backfired. But honestly, how much money does it cost me to repair a chem lab and an electronics factory compared to the chance of breaking an Offworld, right? Even with thinking machines, it can still be an extremely strong move. So it was an interesting little game here. By the same token, I really don't like using dynamite when I'm in the lead, just in case I do hit a goon squad, because all my stuff is super expensive. My debt's still going completely insane. This time it's because of power, right? I tried to move out of power when power was low. Now I'm trying to move back into power just to stay alive. And I'm not buying fuel to keep my chemicals running. Which I had the opportunity, you know, I could sell all this steel, but I'm trying to move into an off-world, so I want my steel, and I'm just being indecisive about the whole thing. Don't be indecisive. It's one of my strengths, is I'm almost never indecisive. I know exactly what I want to do and when I want to do it. You guys should certainly try and play that way as well. We'll see that Soren's been flashing 100% for quite some time now. We're just waiting for him to notice that he can kill us, or for him to decide that it is worthwhile to kill us instead of you. But we still try and fight through, you know. We do manage to pay off some debt. We are managing to make some money. We scare Soren into buying his own stock. You know, it's like, it's little steps, it's progress, but we're just so far behind at this point. It doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. I did finally get electronics production working, which I do scrap for steel. That shouldn't be too much of a surprise because, yes, electronics are worth more than steel, but you can make steel significantly faster than you can make electronics. So that was kind of the goal there. Also, I was focusing on knocking down Soren's Offworlds, which was going to drive the steel of price, or the price of steel, words, through the roof. And so that was kind of the goal of moving into steel even more than electronics. It's very, very expensive for a robotic player to repair his Offworlds, even with thinking machines. We're creeping back up towards 100%, and there's really nothing I can do. I'm like trying to, as Soren is selling stock, I'm like trying to buy into it, just trying to guarantee that my stock price is as high as possible, and it's not going to work, and I'm going to get bought out. And that's the end of it for me. I do check out the map. I don't remember too much about the map. It was double Offworld to one Offworld at this point. Soren's production was just fine. He had all kinds of electronics flowing in. He was in a real good spot. The Pleasure Dome never took off this game. Like, the colony was just never growing, and it spent most of its time shrinking, so that shouldn't be any surprise whatsoever. And let's look at the resources that I pulled up. Well, see, me, I made a fair amount of money, frankly, but my auto purchasing was just too high. Whereas Soren, he made less money, but he didn't have to do near so much purchasing of debt, right? Soren at least made less money on world. I think off world he made up for it a fair amount. So it was pretty close in terms of money actually made, but my debt was so high. I just punished myself so hard with debt this game that I wasn't able to hold on. Once you look at this screen, you can see it wasn't that bad. It was just that I let debt go. And you can't do that. Debt's a good tool, but you got to be careful with it. this is the point of the game where it's pretty obviously completely over. You just didn't have the money to finish out Soren. And Soren had something like, I want to say 4 of her 10 stocks taken. I think I hit the observer button and actually remembered to do that before too long. And we can get a better look, there it is, at how the game actually stands. We'll see that Soren has a good 450,000, whereas Yu only has about 300,000. And given that Soren's stock price is higher, Yu's buy price is lower, we can assume that Soren is going to finish out the game from here. But, you know, I can hang out and do a little bit more recording so you guys can go ahead and see the end of the game just to sate your desires. Let's see, trying to remember anything else actually interesting about the patch. Oh yeah, one more thing. The game of the day. The game of the day now defaults to executive level rather than assistant from what I saw. So that should actually start being interesting. A little bit more challenge than it used to be. I'm certainly excited about that because I was interested in the idea of the game of the day. It's like, okay, it's a map that everybody can play. And we know what map it's going to be, but it ended up being so easy it wasn't worth it. Soren gets the buy. No surprise there whatsoever. Anybody could have seen that coming. And that's going to be the game. All that said, I'm very much looking forward to this patch. I think there are some really solid changes going into the game with it. I hope to see more people playing with it. I'm certainly looking forward to having more opponents. But for now, it's time to wrap up this video. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.